robots or machines that can actually go inside the body, and they can kill the harmful bacteria or tumor cells, or they can capture the bacteria so you can see or you can detect them in the early stages, or they can be used for the targeted delivery and so on. So all these applications or the areas are very interesting. Actually, in the real life, there are many applications do exist related to the micro robots or nano robots. I will come to them later. But when the people were thinking about designing something like this, then the immediate problem was what will provide the motion to these things? What sort of engine or motor we should have to that can provide the motion to such robots or machine at the nano scale? So we know that in real life, in our day-to-day life, we see that we have different motor technologies that do exist to provide the motion at different length scales or in different mediums like air, surface, or water. But the scale that I'm talking about here is less than 60 times less than the width of your hair. You can just imagine this is the 1 micrometer or less. This is the scale I'm talking about, and here is the hair. This is the cross section of hair, and this is the dot to the right scale, and this is the 1 micrometer. So now you can imagine at this small scale, none of these motor technologies can be built. This is simply impossible because of the two main factors. The first thing is you cannot use this technology, means how will you form the engine and the parts and the fuel tank and all these things at such a small scale. Second is there is more scientific reason that when we go to the small scale, a very small scale, then we automatically enter in the low Reynolds regime. Low Reynolds regime means all the technologies that depends on the motion using the inertial forces. Inertial forces increase, and if you go down to the very small scale, then you lose the mass. Basically, things become massless. So all the techniques that use the inertial forces for the propulsion or the motion will not work at the small scale. So in a nutshell, I can say, in a simple words, I can say nothing that exists at the bigger level or large scales for the motor will not work at the small scale. So we have to find some alternate technologies or more better ideas. One design means whenever we lie in some difficulty or trap in some difficulty, then we always look towards the nature to find the solutions. So here also at this scale, nature provided some ideas or some solutions for these things, like protein motors, for example. So we all have in our cells some form of motor, protein motor. They always keep moving inside our cells to deliver different type of liquid vesicles or the different type of nutrients from one part to another part. So these protein motors, they move out of the site-specific bonding mechanism. They move over the microtubules, and this movement basically allow them to, as I said, transfer the nutrients or liquid vesicles inside the cells. You can see in the schematic, this animation here in the video. This is the real protein motor that is moving over the microtubule, and it's carrying a big blue color, this droplet or the liquid vesicles. This is the motor protein. They move like this. This actually happening inside our cells. Every time, millions of them are moving from one place to other. So our body has infinite number of motors actually. So this was a very nice idea, very nice concept. It was quickly picked up by the chemists. They because they work with the different type of functional groups, chemical groups, and they use them to design some nanoscale moving objects like a nano car or moving shafts. And this was such a nice idea that in just few years they got a Nobel Prize for chemistry in 2016. So chemists, or I would say biologists, found some way to design the such type of nanoscale machines or motors or provide the motion at the nanoscale. Now it was the physicist's turn. It was the physicist turn to design something simple and that can provide the motion at the small scale. So for the physicist, we saw that a simple design could be if we work with the Janus particles. Janus particles, here particularly with Janus particle, I mean a particle which has two materials on the opposite surfaces. One is the active material, active means the chemically active material, and another is the passive material. So this is called Janus after the name of a Roman god Janus. Like our Brahma has four heads, and the god Roman god has the two heads. They are pointing on the opposite directions. So similarly, with the similarity in these two structures, we call it also Janus particles. So now you assume that if you have a Janus particle which has, suppose, this orange color material is the chemically active and the gray color material is inert material or some passive material, and you put it in a chemical medium, suppose for example peroxide, or sometimes water is also in chemistry is a chemical. So there could be several chemicals. You put it in some chemical medium such that this material can react with this chemical or it can decompose this chemical. Then what will happen? Because the chemical activity is happening only one side of the particle, because this side is anyway it's inert. So only this side is active. So it will make a chemical gradient around the Janus particle. Once the chemical gradient is formed, then there is the basic law of physics that if there is a gradient somewhere, then some force will act to get the equilibrium again. It's for everything, like even if there is a temperature gradient or chemical gradient, sorry, or pressure gradient, whatever is the gradient. So this is in the chemistry, this chemical gradient, and after effect of the chemical gradient is the fluid flow around the particle to get the equilibrium, chemical equilibrium again. This is called this process in colloids or chemistry is called the diffusiophoresis. Once this fluid flow starts around the particle, then there will be a principle of physics, that is the simple thing like momentum conservation. If there is some momentum in this side, then to conserve the momentum, the particle will feel a momentum in the opposite side. So it will start moving in the opposite side of this fluid flow. And the moment it starts moving, it become a motor. I'm calling it motor because the simple definition means of the general definition of motor is the thing that can, or the object that can convert some form of energy into the mechanical energy. So here it's changing the chemical energy into the mechanical energy or into the motion. So we can simply call it a motor. And depending on its size, we can call it nanomotor or micromotors. So to fabricate this type of motor, I started with a very basic principle. I formed a monolayer of the silica particles. They are commercially available in different sizes. So this is how we can form the monolayer. It looks like this if you see it from the side as a cross-section view. And you deposit some TiO2, for example. TiO2 is a photoactive material. So you deposit some TiO2 from the top, then it will automatically, it will cover the half of it, because if it is coming from top, then it cannot go, TiO2 cannot go in this side. So it will form the half, it will coat it half. And if it is half coated, then it's automatically, you can call it a Janus particle. So here is the SEM image. You can see in the SEM image, these are the 1.5 micrometer diameter particles. And this side, the grainy side, is the TiO2 coating. This is a 50 nanometer coating over the 1.5 micrometer silica particles. And out of many possible phases of TiO2, only NRT's phase is active, chemically active. So we did some processing. I'm not going in that detail here. We did some processing to convert it into the NRT's phase, and the XRD data shows that this was the NRT's phase. So once you have a Janus particle with half TiO2 coating, and you illuminate it with the UV light of wavelength anything less than 380 nanometer, because 380 nanometer is the band gap of TiO2. So if you illuminate it with a UV light, then it generates a pair of electron and hole across its band gap. And Now, if you put it in a peroxide medium, for example, it reacts with many chemicals, but peroxide is very easy to decompose. So if you put it in the peroxide medium, then these electron and holes participate in these two reactions to decompose the peroxide. And once they start decomposing the peroxide on this side, then the chemical gradient is formed because this side is anyway inert. And once the chemical gradient is formed, then following the same mechanism that I discussed before, it will start to swim. So let's see how do they swim actually. So this is the real image of the particle, these nanomotors. This is the microscopic image. You are seeing this under the microscope now. And when there is no light, no UV light, then they do the Brownian motion. And when you turn the light on, then they become active and they start moving in the random directions. They become motor. So this light-driven swimming of these motors can be seen even better in terms of the trajectories. When there is no light, then they are confined into, means this trajectory is plotted from the center 0, 0 position in XY axis. So here, when there's no light, then the particles are trapped in a very, or confined in a very small region. They are not going anywhere. Like this is for 3 seconds, and in 3 seconds, they are going hardly 2 micrometer in plus minus X and Y. But if you turn the light on, then they become motor and they start moving in random directions. They are the trajectories of multiple particles, not a single particle. So they start moving in random direction. Each trajectory from here to here represents the trajectory of one particle. So they start moving in random directions, making the long trajectories. Since the catalytic activity of TiO2, because TiO2 is a photocatalytic material, depends on the intensity of light. So what does that mean? It means if you increase the intensity of light, because whole activity is dependent on the catalytic activity of TiO2, how fast it decomposes the surrounding chemical. So if we increase the intensity or the power of light source, or can we control the power of light source, then we can control the velocity of these motors. So we can say that we have fabricated the motors at the small scale that whose activity can be turned on and off. We have the full control, as well as we can also control their speed. So this is like the real motor that we see in the real world. We can turn them on and off. We can control their speed as per our requirement. So this is what we can do at the nanoscale. And here, just for the similarity, you can see how similar these motors are to the real biological systems. This is the bacteria. These are the real bacteria here in this video, captured by Harvard University Professor Ashberg. And these are my light-driven motors. And if you see their motion, then you will see they are quite similar. Means don't go to the color of black and white. Here you can appreciate that they have the similar sizes and similar swimming behavior. And this is the interesting observation, as it shows that how we can design the control dynamics systems like the robots or nanomotors at such a small length scale, which mimic the properties of the biological systems. Further, if you put a magnetic coating or magnetic cap on these particles or motors, then by applying the external magnetic field, because magnetic particle will always try to align with the external magnetic field. So with that external magnetic field, we can control the path of the moving motors. So here you can see in a video that how this motor is exactly following a predefined path by the applying the external magnetic field. So this is interesting in a way that if you want to, in the previous video, you see that the motors were moving in the random directions. So sometimes it's important to make them move in a defined path from point A to point B or point C. So like the real motors, like if you have some car or some bus, then you always want it to move in a defined path. You don't want it to go in the random directions. So path can be controlled externally by applying the external magnetic field. So now you have even more control over the motors. So considering the small size and dynamics of these motors, they are useful for a large number of interesting applications. Like they provide a artificial system to study the self-organization or collective behaviors of the complex biological systems like the bacterial swarming or fish schooling or the cell migration, etc. The dynamics of these colloidal motors allow the possibility to fabricate the materials with the unique properties like a self-healing and reconfigurability. Targeted drug delivery is a very hot and interesting topic of the biology. So these motors can play a very important role. They can carry the drugs and they can deliver them to the specific location in the body. In water cleaning, they can be helpful in cleaning the water by selectively picking up the hazardous microbes or chemical molecules. They can be useful for powering up the small scale machines and similarly in delivering the cargo in the microfluidic channels. In my research, I am working on most of these problems. Here I will discuss some of them. So let's first start with the dynamic materials, the fabrication of dynamic materials. This is mainly about the fabrication of dynamic materials via the self-assembly of the colloids or the self-assembly driven by nanomotors. So we all know that colloids are considered as the building block. They are used to fabricate the structures via self-assembly or the crystals or glasses at high colloidal densities or high colloidal numbers. And they are useful for the applications like in a study of phase transition behaviors or as a template for the material fabrications or in the photonic crystals. So there are many people who are working on the assembly of or the structure formation of colloids. The whole branch of physics that's called colloidal physics works on these things. But the problem is that this type of assembly or crystal or structure formation in colloids suffer with some very basic problems. Like it's a kinetically slow process. It may take from few hours to several days to see some structure formation in the colloidal system. It needs some critical particle density. Like if you, for example, if you want to form the colloidal crystal, then you must have at least 50% uh, particle fraction, particle density. Otherwise, nothing will happen in the system. And there's no reconfigurability. If you form or you set some structure or assembly in the colloidal system, then there is no way to change it. Suppose you form a colloidal crystal, then you can't go back to change it into the colloidal glass. So once something is formed, then you cannot change it. So these are the three main problems with the normal colloidal system, and let's see how we can deal with them using the nanomotor system or the active colloidal system. So here we have the colloidal system. This one has the passive particles or silica particles here. This is the equilibrium system. They are just inert particles. So in this system, at this given particle density, they are just doing their Brownian motion, and they can never uh, form any assembly or structure at this particle density. So this will take forever to form anything useful to see in this system. And now what happens if I add a small fraction of nanomotors in this colloidal system? So now I am here. So only these black half dots here are the nanomotors, and rest all the particles, white particles, are the silica particles or the inert particles. And let's see what happens if we turn the activity on. We then we see that these motors start to move through the passive particles. They collect them, they crystallize them, they form the small crystallites. Crystallites further grow in size by fusion. So they grow in size and they start forming the bigger crystals. And interestingly, this whole activity survives only until the light is turned off. And then when you turn off the light, then the whole activity melts down and particle goes back to their original Brownian state. So this is an interesting observation. It shows the formation of reversible crystals in a colloidal system without taking care of critical particle density and in a very rapid manner. This whole activity here took less than 3 minutes, which was going to take forever in the equilibrium system without nanomotor or micromotor system. So micromotor are very useful here. They help in forming the reversible or reconfigurable crystals. If I go to the mechanism part, then it's the whole this reversible assembly is governed by a very simple principle that if you put a colloid or a particle, you don't need a Janus particle. You just put a particle in a chemical gradient. Then following the diffusophoretic movements, diffusophoresis, the particle will start to move towards the higher chemical gradient or low chemical gradient depending on its surface properties, but it will move. So in this case, our active particles are forming a local chemical gradient. I discussed this thing. They are forming a local chemical gradient, and following this chemical gradient, the surrounding particles may come in and get attached. And further, because everything is moving, so this movement will facilitate the collection of more surrounding particles, and the whole structure will grow in size and it form a crystallite. Here, the important thing is this whole activity is driven by light. So by controlling the intensity of light, we can control the interaction strength between this nanomotor and the passive particles. We can control the interaction strength. And this dynamic control, because we are dynamically controlling this interaction strength with the intensity of light, this dynamic control over the interaction strength can be used to tune the size of the structures. Like here you see, we have a big hexagonal structure formed around a single, this in the center is the nanomotor, this single nanomotor. Here, right now it's formed at the higher light intensity, so interaction strength is high. Single nanomotor can collect the particles up to this distance or 2 layers of the passive particles. But if you decrease the intensity of light, now it's decreased, interaction strength is reduced. So if we chop off the second layer, only first layer is left, size of the structure is reduced. If I increase the light intensity again, then I get the second layer back. So I got the bigger size again. So this is actually what is happening here. If we see it in another way, we are forming or we are dynamically controlling the size of the structures, which is not possible in the equilibrium or normal nanostructures. Whatever nanostructures we see, whatever nano or microstructures are formed in the other methods, you cannot control their size or you cannot reverse their structure. This is only possible here in this system using the nanomotors. So this is the remarkable direction where the nanomotors can be used. So once you know how to control the size of the structures, the shape of the structures can be further controlled by carefully selecting the size ratios of nanomotor and the surrounding passive particles. Like you can form the hexagonal, the square, pentagon, hexagon, and the heptagonal shape. Here, the shape of these structures are formed by a simple rule that how many passive particles can be fit in a closed shell around a single active particle or single nanomotor. So this is the closed layer. You see, this is the closed layer. If you reduce the size, then there will be a this periphery will reduce. So you cannot fit 5 particles. Then you will end up with 4. And if you increase the size of the inner particles, then you can fit more in the surrounding. So this is how the structures are governed. So right now these structures, you can see they are shown by these arrows. These are the structures. They are formed. So they are right now they are at the lower light intensity. So the interaction strength is low. So no particle can attach in the second layer. But if you increase the light intensity, this is the beauty of the dynamics here. If you increase the light intensity, then you can allow the particles to grow in size, freely grow in size, like what you saw in the video before this. Then we got some interesting results, like we can form the assembly of different lattice orders, like the crystals of the square or hexagonal lattice order, or the amorphous assembly with completely disordered state. So the lattice order of the structures here is finally or mainly decided by the shape of the unit cells, shape of the starting unit cells, like a square or hexagonal unit cells can always be fit uh, in a regular pattern. But if you have a pentagonal shape, pentagonal unit cell, then you cannot fit it into the order pattern or close packed patterns. Then you end up with the amorphous state. So controlling the lattice order is also interesting thing, because the people who grow the epitaxies or the crystalline materials, they know how difficult it is to go from one to other, or to define the lattice order. Here the case of, particularly I will show you the case of this square unit cell. Unit cell is very interesting. Like for the same set of particles, same set means the same size ratio of the particles. In these two videos, I have the same set of particles. And if I grow the assembly at a higher light intensity and at lower light intensity, light is basically doing nothing but controlling the interaction strength. So if I grow it at the higher light intensity, then I end up with the amorphous state. Interaction strength is high. Particles are attaching in the random locations, at the random locations. So they are breaking the square symmetry. And when they join and they fuse, and then they form the disordered state. Because in the very starting stage, the square symmetry of a particular unit cell is broken. It was not preserved. But if you grow the assembly at a lower light intensity such that the interaction between the immediate nanomotor and passive particle is possible, no particle can attach in the second layer, then you see you end up with a perfect square lattice. So in this way, with the same set of particles, by just controlling the intensity of light, that means that dynamically, we can control the lattice order of the structure. And this is, I can say, this is the first colloidal system that shows such reconfigurability in the structures. There are people who work on the fabrication of crystals or colloidal crystals or glasses, and they know how difficult it is to see them in a system. And then going from one state to another state is completely impossible. So I believe that this system of nanomotors can make their life a bit easier. So this was about forming the dynamic 2D or 2D reconfigurable materials using the nanomotors or the self-assembly of nanomotors. There are few other interesting things that can be addressed by this dynamic self-assembly approach of the nanomotors. For example, in nature, we see that there are some systems like the cells in our body. They have the ability to control their viscosity in a dynamic fashion. They can regulate their viscosity, and this ability allow them to control the fluid flows in and across the cell walls. So this happens continuously in the biological cells. They continuously keep changing the viscosity so that the fluid flows, the flow of fluids can be controlled, means how much flow they want to take in or release out. So they control these things. And it is believed to happen because of the ability of proteins that lies inside the cells, the ability of proteins to cross-link on demand, they cross-link and form such network or cross-linked state. You see in this video, this is showing the cross-linked or network like uh, transition from normal homogeneously dispersed state. This is, if you see, this is the homogeneously dispersed state in the starting of the proteins. And of course, means everything in the body is driven by some signals. We don't see those signals, but our brain is controlling those signals. And this Can you hear me now? If there's some problem with the connection.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you now.
Okay, okay. Actually, there's some power cut, so I lost the connection.
It's okay, and we thought that it might be on our side actually.
Okay, so is this the slide is also visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, it's visible.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Thanks. So in the nature we see this phenomena. It is a my flow. So let me resume. So yeah, this it happens because of the cross-linking ability of the proteins that lie inside our cells. So this transition from the homogeneous distribution to this cross-linked or gel-like state gives a change in the viscosity of the cellular medium or the cells. So having such ability or the dynamic feature in the artificial systems could be very interesting, so that you can on demand control the viscosity of the artificial mediums or systems. And with this motivation, we set one experiment, and we we put a large number of these nanomotors in a system. And in the starting, when the activity is off, you can see that they are the homogeneously distributed here. So this is looking like they two are looking like same in the starting. And when you turn the activity on, you give the light. Basically, light drives the activity. So when you turn the light on to turn the activity on, then you see our system also form by because of the dynamic self-assembly, that the same approach that I discussed in the previous slides. By dynamic self-assembly approach, it also formed the cross-linked or this gel-like state. And this transition from the homogeneous to cross-linked state in our system too gives rise to a change in the viscosity. So we observed a change in the viscosity of up to 10 times, starting from 10 to we are going to up to roughly 100. And the important thing is this is a light driven system, so we can do this change in the viscosity or rheological properties dynamically by just controlling the light conditions, like turning the light on and off, or by controlling the intensity of light. We can also set the viscosity change between some value, like suppose you want 12 times change or 8 times change, you can also set in between, and you can repeat it for a large number of cycles. So having such property in artificial system is very interesting. It is not shown before. It shows the way to design the materials with properties inspired from the biological systems. And the materials with such dynamic rheological properties can be interesting for some applications, like forming some mediums for study or culture of the bacteria or cells, where the viscosity of medium plays a very important role. Or I can imagine like in applications like controlling the movement or motion of micro scale or nanoscale particles in microfluidic channels. There is a established branch of science where people study the all different type of chemicals or physical colloids and all these things in the microfluidic channels or nanofluidic channels or in the lab on a chip devices. So there you can control their motion by just controlling the local viscosity of the medium. To demonstrate this thing, demonstrate this idea, we put a magnetic bar. You see the size of this magnetic bar is very small. It's just 3 micrometer in or 4 micrometer in the length, and so 1 micrometer or 2 micrometer in the in the cross sectional direction. So this magnetic bar is I put it inside the nanomotor solution or nanomotor suspension. If the nanomotors are not active, then they behave just like a colloidal particle. So in that case, if you apply a rotating magnetic field using a Helmholtz coil, you rotate the magnetic field in X and Y, then we can rotate the magnetic bar because it will follow the external magnetic field. So it will rotate in plane. So when there is no activity, nanomotors are not active, then it will rotate freely. But if you increase the activity or you give the activity to the nanomotors, then they will start to form the assembly and to change the viscosity of the medium. And when the viscosity of medium is changed, then the motion of or the rotation of the bar will become difficult. And we will see this in video. Then in starting, it's rotating freely, and with the change in the viscosity, its the motion rotation is slowly decreasing, and finally it will stop. So this is the demonstration of idea that by changing the local viscosity of the medium, we can control the motion of the nanoscale or microscale objects in the fluid medium or microfluidic channels. So after this, I will briefly show you another direction where the nanomotors can play a very crucial role. This is in the understanding of the complex behavior or the collective behaviors of the biological systems. When we say collective behaviors, then there are a large number of behaviors that are not fully understood, and they are always a mystery for the scientist. Like why, suppose I give you just a simple example that why the birds form the V-shaped pattern when they fly, or why do they flock, or why the fishes form the school, and why the cells migrate in a collective fashion. So these are just some examples, but there's a lot to understand or study uh, and at the deep level. And if we can understand these things, then we can understand that how the living organism or the biological world is organized, and how the biological world or living organism actually they communicate with each other. So we can understand that in a language of physics instead of biology or some other signals or some other real languages. We can understand that in terms of the physics. Physics can be a language there that is used to communicate between the living systems or the biological systems. So these are some simple examples that I just discussed with you. As I said, there's a lot to understand. So when we say this, then I give you one example. Then that at very beginning level, at very initial level, when everyone develop from the embryo, means in the starting there is an embryo before the birth of anyone. So when the embryo develop, then there is you all know that there's a multiplication of cells, the division of cells, multiple cells are formed in the embryo, and you will have thousands of hundreds of cells, and they divide and they start collecting and forming the organs. So this is something we know that it happens. But the interesting thing is during the embryo development or the division of cell process within the embryo, all the cells, we know that all the cells of the body are, most of the cells, not all, have the different feature. They are of different type. Like brain cell are different, kidney cells are different, heart cells are different, skin cells are different. So how the cells know that where to go, means which one is their right position during the cell division process, how do they know how the kidney cells will arrange at the right place, and the liver cells will attach at the right place, and they will start growing? This is interesting, and people are trying to understand this thing, and this is called, in scientific term, this is called morphogenesis. That the spatial distribution of cells in the earlier stage of growth is called morphogenesis. If we can know it in a better way, the morphogenesis, you know that sometimes we see that there are some disease that we have from the birth. So that's are mainly because the cells, or in the embryo growth stage, there was some problem, or some problem was in the DNA. Could be both. So if we can know these processes in a better way, then we can control the biology or some of the problems that may be associated with the embryo development stages or from the birth. So this is the example of the embryo of the early stage development of the embryo of zebrafish. As I said, it happens in most of the animals, including us, but capturing is always difficult under the lab environment. So scientists have captured this in 2008. It's after 2008, it is still not very clearly understood, the phenomena, as I said. So they observed this thing for the zebrafish embryo in the microscope in the lab. You see these cells in the embryo, the different colors, the dots are the cells inside the embryo, and in starting they are uniformly distributed. The colors are representing nothing but the distance from the center. So radial distance from the center they are representing. They are uniformly distributed, and you will see they spontaneously start some flow. They break the symmetry of the distribution, and they set the vertical flows. And it is believed that these flows, when they start, these flows help the cells to reach to the right locations. They redistribute the cells. So such flows the vertical flows in the early stage of the embryo are very important to understand, but to study them in a controlled environment is very difficult. So with this motivation, we formed one artificial system. Here you see the spherical chamber, confined chamber is formed. And inside here, we have a large number of nanomotors that can move itself like cells. And to make the similar conditions, we put outside the oil, which is a smooth interface. And this is the liquid droplet, water droplet sort of. So this is the liquid oil interface, and they are confined here at the high density. And similar to this, in the starting, they also have the homogeneous distribution. When we turn the light on to give the activity, because cells are always active, and to give the activity to these nanomotors, then what we see, okay, so these also break the symmetry and they form the similar vertical flows. So this similarity in the vertical flows in the two systems make make ours a very interesting system, because by carefully studying this system, we can find some clues about the biological systems or the behavior. So we have developed a very good theoretical model for this. This is a published work, recently published work. So I'm not going in the details of this theoretical model because of the time limit and complicacy of the theoretical physics. But very briefly, I can say what is happening here is the effect of two major physics phenomena. One is the hydrodynamic flows at the high density. Like when the particle or these nanomotors move, then if you remember the initial slides, then there is a flow around the particles in opposite direction. So when they are far from each other, I mean at the low density, low particle density or low nanomotor density in a solution, and then they can freely move in a random direction. They don't form any vertical flows. They don't talk to each other. They don't form the self-organization. But when you keep them at the high density, when you take them at the high density, then what happens? The flows around the particles or the motors or individual motors, the flows start to interact with the flows of the other motors. So it's like a dipole. You see, the two motors having the flows in opposite directions will be energy point of view. It will be less favorable condition. So if two motors having the flows in the same direction will be the more favorable condition from the energy minimum energy point of view. Something similar to the dipole. So when these at the high density they interact with each other, they try to align the flows in the same direction. And when they align the flows in the same direction, their motion also get aligned in the same direction, and then they form the collective behavior and the vertical flows. Second reason is means they both are actually equally valid regions. We have performed a large number of control experiment to figure out the effect, which one is more, which one is less. They they both the regions are equally important. Second reason is if you have a chemically active particle at the interface. Here we have the interface of liquid and oil. So if you have a chemically active particle at the interface, then the chemical can cross the interface, and once it crosses the, because it's a producing some chemical, this is chemically active particle. So it's a, suppose it's a, in peroxide medium, it's decomposing the peroxide and producing suppose oxygen and hydrogen. So in a broad term we can say everything is chemical, like even the hydrogen is chemical, oxygen is chemical, peroxide is chemical. So it is producing some chemical, let's say, for the simplicity, and that chemical suppose crosses the boundary of the interface, then it may decrease or increase the surface tension. This is simple to understand because there is some chemical species close to the interface, then it can reduce or increase or decrease the surface energy, net surface energy, and change in the surface energy is basically results nothing but the surface tension. They are connected to each other. And when there is a change in the surface tension at some point, then there will be a flow in and around the interface in the both side, because it's a conserved system. So if there is a flow here, and this is the interface, there is a flow here outside the liquid. In suppose in the oil, this is the oil and this is the liquid. Suppose if there is a flow here outside, then there will be a flow inside also in the same direction. Otherwise, the momentum conservation law will be violated. So this is the flow. This is the theoretical model. We put one particle at the interface, near the interface. Here outside the oil, this is the water medium. And a single particle can produce the flows like this. So, and these are if you remember, in our droplet also, we observe the similar vertical flows. So these two effects, that the Marangoni stress and the high particle density effect, or basically the hydrodynamic coupling at high density, they leads to this behavior where we see the flows very similar to the flows in the early stage of the embryo. So okay, so we are working on in these directions, that how we can further derive more interesting information in this. These were the initial results, and some other directions also we are working in our lab, like how the motors can be used for some like a targeted drug delivery things, or some biological applications like killing the particular cells or the bacteria inside the body, or how they can be used to capture the bacteria or cells to diagnose them, or for the early stage detections. These are some interesting areas that we are working on. So with this, I think time is almost finished. So I summarize my talk here. Janus particles with the right choice of materials can be used as a light-driven nanomotors. Nanomotors that I discussed, that can be used to fabricate the reconfigurable self-assemblies or the the structures whose shape, size, and lattice order can be controlled dynamically by just controlling the intensity of light. And these nanomotors, light-driven nanomotors, can also be used to form the, the, the medium whose rheological properties can be controlled by controlling the intensity of light. And they form the artificial system to understand the self-organization behavior of the biological or the crucial biological systems. So this is the end of the talk. If you want to know more about the research work, or if you're interested in the research activities, then you can also visit my web page. That is amnlab.in. Now I will be happy to take questions if you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thank you for a very, very interesting talk on this exciting topic of nanomotors. So I am sure that it would have been fascinated everyone that how these nanomotors actually work, and also they got to know about their use in drug delivery, targeted drug delivery, water purification, cleaning, I mean, and cancer treatment, etc. So with this, I thank you so much for enlightening all of us with your knowledge. So is there any question, participants?
Thank you.
If you have, please write the questions or you can just ask sir directly. I think there should, I hope there should be a number of questions because this is actually very interesting topic and a new one actually to all of us. So is there anyone who wants to ask the question? Audience? Anyone has any question? If anyone has any question, please let us know. Okay, so sir, I think for the time being there is no question, but if there is any question, let me ask you
Okay.
directly or we will forward it to you.
No problem.
And we will
Sure.
hope that we will invite you personally sometime at Slide after this period of pandemic ends.
Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am, excuse me, may I ask one question?
Yeah, please.
Sir, I just want to ask that in commercial products nowadays, to what extent we are able to use these products, or we common people, how could we recognize that these products are in use?
Actually, your voice is breaking, so I couldn't get it properly. Whatever I could get is, I think you are asking about the commercial launch of these products or the use of the commercial use of these products.
Yes.
Is that?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So commercial launch, I would say it will take some time depending on the application. Like if you want to suppose use it really on the biological systems, like targeted drug delivery or killing cells, then you know how the things progress in this field. You have to first start with some lab environment, then you start with the rat and then the rabbit, and then you will come to the human after 20 years. So this is a normal standard procedure in the biology. So that's because of that I cannot say that it can come in 1 year or 2 years. On some small animals like a rabbit or rat, people have already started the experiments in some like in eyes, solving some problem in eyes and all these things. Other sectors are having, I think, a little bit faster growth, like in water cleaning or in the colloidal delivery in the microfluidic channel. Especially microfluidic channels, we are having a very fast progress because it's everything is a research environment. You can do whatever you want in the under your microscope or lab on chip devices. You are not dependent on some certifications from others. So it's a very fast progress. The field has just emerged from roughly in 2008 or 9. And in 12 years, you can see the number of publications in this field that are coming. It's a huge volume. it's growing very fast, and quality of papers you see that's it's also very good. So I can imagine a very in a couple of years or in a coming decade, we come up with a very nice applications.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other question? I don't see for the time being. So thank you
No
so
problem.
much.
You can just pass on the questions if you find any
Yes,
question, then I will be happy to answer.
yes, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Okay, sir. So thank you so much for sparing your time.
Okay, so
Because today is a holiday too, so thank you.
okay,
Okay,
thank you
sir.
all.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Bye bye.
मैम रिकॉर्डिंग ऑफ करना.
Yeah. Okay, so participants.